Hello. We continue today our conversations about preliminary contracts for a condo, for a newly built condo. We've already discussed some documents, some financial information, some general information. So we'll touch more today. What else, if everything previously was considered to be okay? What else can you think of when you just look through the preliminary contract and the documents that they should provide to you as potential buyer before you sign? It's important before you sign. We discussed that the building, if the construction is already going on, the building is something to be considered to be governed, managed by way of the co-ownership declaration and the syndicate acting on that base. Maybe some condos are already sold. Maybe it's not only the contractor, the developer, the seller who is the only owner of the building right now. So technically, the syndicate might be already there. Even if the seller is the only owner, the syndicate might be already there. And if that's the case, then you should have a look at the minutes of the General Assembly, the meetings, the administrators' meetings of that syndicate, just to see what obligations are already and what regulations are already imposed on the condo owners. And if those documents, even in a just very negligent manner sometimes, but still prepared, you should have a look at the documents regarding the financial situation of the syndicate. Are there already any debts? Any plans for future expenses to be borne by the members of the syndicate, including, again, the condo owners? What's the situation of the contingency fund, because you will have to contribute to that. If there are any indications already of financial problems, if the fees are too high or not properly collected, if there are some mismanagement issues or whatever, and for that matter, you might even ask an accountant to look through the documents with you. Just to see, or again, a lawyer or notary, to see if there are any indications of something to be aware of in advance. Also, again, if there are legal hypothecs, as we discussed before. You will have to calculate, though it's never guaranteed with like 100% guarantee, but at least you will have to see through the indications of how much will it cost you to own this condo. And I'm not talking only about taxes now. I'm again talking about the fees to be charged by the syndicate for the sake of the building itself, for the sake of the common spaces, for the sake of maintenance, for the sake of that contingency fund, which should be used in case of some major renovations or reparation or whatever that might be needed sometime in the future. And if you see that those problems are already coming, or at least you could see them coming through the documents, while the building is still new or is still under construction, you might sort of imagine what kind of a build quality you will be facing, and again, all together with the documents and information that we discussed before, you could think of what to verify about the previous work of those architects, engineers, the construction companies in their previous projects, what kind of problems you should particularly inquire about, just to understand what to expect in this particular situation. Well, the whole idea of the preliminary contract, as you understand, is to protect you more or less in the situation when you're paying money for something which does not exist yet, as opposed to a situation where you are simply buying a house, like part of a townhouse or a condo, which is already ready and probably existed for quite some time with another owner, so you could just verify what was going on before, and that could give you better information of what you would expect. But here, nothing is existing yet. So you collect all the indications to make an informed decision, as opposed to a negligent decision in an expectation that everything should be okay, everything should be taken care of, as opposed to expecting some non-existent government protection and so on and so on. So it's an important decision, and having a current real estate market in mind, it's a very expensive decision usually. So if you avoid some 20, 30, 50, 70, $100,000 problem by doing this kind of verification in advance, it's as good as you've earned this money. And if upon verification you would prefer not to go with some project, however tempting it was at first, then again you might have economized a lot comparing to the problems you could have avoided by that. So it's important. It's important to do it diligently. One simple look through the first page of the preliminary contract given to you by the sales representative, it's definitely not enough. It's like totally not enough. Of course, there are many, many, many situations when it all goes relatively well and you receive more or less what you expected through the time more or less foreseen. But unfortunately, the situations when it's not the case, those situations are also many. And when you come with that kind of a problem to a lawyer, you should expect, again, long-lasting and stressful period of time with the result not so much guaranteed. So again, it's better to review all that, to collect all that, to go through all this information as much as possible in advance before you put down your signature on the preliminary contract. Restrictions. Sometimes they're evident, but sometimes they're not. And again, because it's a private property, some generally available rights that you might expect in public might not be available here. So there might be limits on the noise you can create, and maybe you're a musician or maybe you're a composer, and those limits will just deprive you from the purpose of buying it here. Or maybe you're a painter and the smell of the paint would be considered as prohibited in the building. Or maybe you have a dog or expecting to have a dog or some other kind of a pet, and again, that might be prohibited. Maybe you're a smoker. Maybe you like to jog around the building in the mornings, and for for what it's worth, it might be also restricted. Or in some common spaces, you might be prohibited from appearing in a certain kind of a look, or so on, so on, so on. Again, it's a private property, so the restrictions, as long as they are agreed upon in the regulations under the regulations enacted under the Declaration of Co-Ownership, those restrictions will be valid. You could not do much against them unless they're like clearly discriminatory, which is not that easy to prove. So once again, the more you know in advance, the less unpleasant surprise you will have later. And one thing which is usually not in the preliminary contract, nor it is in the documents provided, but you could use the information from those documents to collect this information about the builder, the developer himself, the company. But of course, you should verify if the builder is registered with the Régie de Bâtiment de Quebec, and there is a license, and you could usually go there online yourself and just verify against the company name. But do remember, as we discussed, that there might be a situation where the seller is, legally speaking, not the company which is building the property. And if that's the case, and if you don't see a license, then you'll have to verify who has the license and what's the what kind of legal relationship between the license holder and the seller. And the less the connection, the worse the situation. You will have to review the guarantee available as much as you can. You can ask for it, or you can just try to do it on your own. Some people even hire private investigators for that, to see if the construction project already received some approval of financing from some bank or other kind of information, or other kind of organization like that. Because one thing, if they actually have money to build whatever they're going to build, at least most of it, or in the other situation, if they don't, the probability of a failure or probability of asking for more and more money from you on the go, threatening that otherwise the whole project will collapse, that probability is greater. So again, it's better to have this information in advance. And of course, one thing, if they start to collect money when there is no municipal approval yet, and another thing, at least it would be more of a reassuring piece of information when such an approval, such a permit was already received. So there will be no, hopefully, for the situation when they come and tell you we'll have to change this, and this, because, well, we simply cannot build a building there. We cannot go with the development there because we were not allowed. It was prohibited. And depending on what's in your preliminary contract, even if at the end of the story, sometimes it's a year, 2-year long story, or at least months long story, they will give your money back to you. Most probably, even then, you'll receive it without interest rate. So it might be simply a scheme to just use your money for quite some time and then give it back to you. And you will lose your interest, but also you will lose some time, and you might lose some good opportunities on the market because you just trusted this one. So this, though it sounds like a hassle, but it's a good idea to verify the permits, to verify the loan approvals, to verify the licenses, all together with all the rest information we've just discussed before, like the ownership declaration, legal connection between the seller and the builder, so on and so on and so on, all in advance. I understand it sounds like a job to do. But again, if this money is at least more or less important to you, it's a job that you have to do, usually on your own. Of course, you can go to a lawyer or to a notary, to an accountant for a consultation. You might even hire some of those people to do all this work for you, but it will cost. But one way or another, this work, this job, has to be performed. The work should be done before you affix your signature. Probably it's not the last video on the topic for us, because questions are coming. But at least these 3 videos are combining the information of some kind of a general nature regarding the questions you should have asked yourself and the seller, maybe your lawyer, in advance. I hope this will help you not to face some unpleasant surprises later. Thank you, and have a nice day.